Okay, this is gross of a neurolocalization lumpectomy specimen, or a partial mastectomy. Came oriented with a short stitch indicating superior and a long stitch indicating lateral.
Set up in the X session number as well.
So first we're going to ink it. Our standard colors are superior blue, lateral yellow, medial orange, inferior green, and deep black. So now after it's inked, we're going to section it. I'm going to section this from deep to the superficial skin. So now I'm going to dictate. I have this machine. I'm dictating case specimen A received in form labeled left partial mastectomy, short superior long lateral, is a needle localization lumpectomy, open parentheses 23 grams, comma 5.5 cm superficial to deep by 3.5 cm medial to lateral by 1.5 cm superior to inferior, close parentheses, period. The specimen is oriented with a short stitching indicating superior and a long stitch indicating lateral, period. The superficial aspect is remarkable for a ellipse of light tan skin, open parentheses 3.0 by 1.5 cm, close parentheses, period. No skin lesions are identified, period. Now I'm going to section it. Your knife should always be larger than what you're sectioning. You want to section as thin as possible. And what I do is lay my pieces out. So now I cut up to the point where I hit the wire, and the idea is that this wire is supposed to be locating where they taken the previous biopsy. So if the wire is not moved around too much before you get the specimen, it should be at the area of hemorrhage, and sometimes if there's a lesion, it should be at that lesion. So I would now pull out the wire and finish the cut. And I would make note that this section was at the end of the needle localization wire. And as you can see, there is some hemorrhage there. There is no lesion though. But sometimes if it's for DCIS, there might not be a lesion. But what we do have is this little area is a collagen plug. So what they do is they take this biopsy and they fill it with collagen, and they put a biopsy clip and so right here you see a metallic clip, and that is the biopsy clip that they put after they take the biopsy. So that is perfect. That's what we want to find, and that is what we're going to describe and what we are going to measure. And I'll just finish cutting the specimen. So when you're cutting, you want to make sure you're cutting nice and straight, that you have ink on all the surfaces. So you don't want any tangential cuts. So meaning that there's ink on all surfaces, all the periphery. And your cuts should be as thin as possible, ideally like 0.3, no more than 0.4 centimeters. especially on a fatty specimen like this. So here we have it sectioned from deep to superficial, and we have this biopsy site, and I'm going to say there's a biopsy site that corresponds with the end of the needle localization wire, and I'm going to say that a metallic biopsy clip was identified at the biopsy site, and I'm going to measure this biopsy site, and I'm going to measure the biopsy site to all the margins. The specimen is serially sectioned from deep to superficial to reveal a tan biopsy site that is filled with a collagen plug, open parentheses, 0.5 by 0.5 by 0.5 cm, close parentheses. Period. The end of the needle localization wire corresponds to this biopsy site. Period. A metallic biopsy clip is identified within the biopsy site. Period. The biopsy site measures 0.3 cm to the inferior margin, comma 1.0 cm to the superior margin, comma 1.4 cm to the lateral margin, comma 2.0 cm to the medial margin, and greater than 2.0 cm to the deep margin, and greater than 2.0 cm to the anterior skin. Period. The remainder of the specimen is comprised predominantly of tan yellow glistening adipose tissue, open parentheses, 85%, close parentheses, admixed with tan white rubbery fibrous tissue, open parentheses, 15%, close parentheses, period. No other lesions are identified, period. Representative sections to include the entire biopsy site is submitted, period. Gross photographs are taken, gross photographs are taken, period. New paragraph inking code, superior blue, inferior green, lateral yellow, medial orange, deep black. New paragraph cassette summary. So basically just heard the entire dictation. We'll just measure the biopsy site and measure the biopsy site to all the margins. And you notice when I measure to the measure to the deep margin and the anterior skin, I just said it was greater than 2.0 cm because here's the lesion, and if we add these pieces together, this will give me a measurement to the skin surface, and it's definitely nice distance, and it's actually about 2.4 cm. So if it's greater than 2 cm, you could definitely say the margin is greater than 2 cm away. You don't have to give a exact measurement. You should give exact measurement anywhere that it's less than 1 cm or less. So we're just going to submit this entire lesion, or the biopsy site. Actually, I'm going to take a gross photograph first. Okay, so now I'm ready to take my sections. So I like to keep the paper that is laid on nice and clean, because I'm going to just roll the specimen back up. So it keeps this orientation that is cut from all these are from deep to superficial. So I don't want to cut on this because I'm going to roll it back up. So I just have another paper that I'm going to cut on. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually, yep, so here's the little collagen plug. I'm just going to block that out, and I'll just cut it like this, and that way in this piece you can see this biopsy site to the inferior margin, to the superior margin, and to the lateral margin. It's too big to keep it whole, so you won't be able to see it to the medial margin, but these cassettes are only so big. And especially with fatty specimens. They need to be as thin as possible. So this is a little thick. So what I do is take the tops of the cassettes and squish the specimen in between, and we'll just thin it down and make sure that whatever slice that you're submitting still has all the ink at the periphery. So microscopically we want to see the ink. So that will go in my first cassette. That's kind of out of camera view, but bring these closer. And our next piece that had the biopsy site. In this one, I could trim it so it shows the medial margin, so that way all the margins will be shown. The same thing, we'll just trim this down. And then I would just then submit any fibrous tissue, any leftover fibrous tissue. So this fat you could just squish out, and we just submit fibrous tissue. And then any of these that have fibrous tissue, and then we'll just submit. This is deep margin. I'm cutting it perpendicular. So that's the deep margin. And this is the skin. We'll section this perpendicular as well. So cassette summary, A1 through A2, entire biopsy site. A3 through A5, fibrous tissue surrounding biopsy site. A6, deep margin, perpendicular sections. A7, anterior skin, perpendicular sections. Period. And then we'll keep these just like this. Put what we cut back here. And then put a paper towel over it, and then we could just roll this up. And that's it.